philosophers live in Greece?
Athens and
Athens is the correct answer. For most of their lives, these philosophers lived in Athens, except for Aristotle, who lived in Macedonia as well. And what event is happening in this picture on the left?
Socrates is about to die.
And why is he drinking poison?
Because he's about to be executed, which he agreed to.
And why is he in prison in the first place? What did he say that was so controversial?
He said that he wasn't afraid of death.
And he also said that he didn't believe in the 12 Olympian gods.
Yeah.
So I think that what got him in trouble, yes. And who was the teacher of Plato?
Socrates.
Excellent. Who was the teacher of Alexander the Great?
Aristotle.
Who wrote the Republic and started the Academy?
Plato.
Who was put on trial and sentenced to death by poison?
Socrates.
Very good. And we'll end with this short video and you can continue your drawing. I'm sorry we've gone over time. Are you okay to stay for 2 minutes?
No, it's okay.
Of his own. In Raphael's work, the great men don't just stand next to each other in a kind of scholars lineup.
Or
drinking
probably not this guy, because I don't think Plato is going to be the one giving him
could
the
have
poison.
escaped into exile, but instead he chooses to die, taking the opportunity to teach his final lesson, that death is not to be feared by the philosopher, but embraced as an apotheosis of the soul. David chooses to paint the moment just as Socrates is grabbing for the poison dragon. He's been discussing at length the immortality of the soul and doesn't even seem to care that he's about to take the implement of his death in hand. On the contrary, Socrates is defiant, gesturing toward the afterlife to which he hastens. David idealizes him. Socrates would have been 70 at the time and somewhat less muscular and beautiful than painted here. The radiant light coming in from the top left.
I think this might be Plato.
Why do you think that's Plato?
Well, I'm pretty sure Plato's probably going to be here. And somewhere in here is probably some of his friends and family.
And how are they reacting?
All look pretty sad.
And what about Socrates himself?
Looks just bold.
Bold, that's a very nice adjective. Yes, he looks almost bold, defiant, confident about what he's about to do. Whereas in contrast, the people around him can't even watch. They are covering their heads. They are holding their head against the wall on the left.
Yeah, even the executioner is holding his head back.
I know he has to do it. It's his job, I suppose. But he thinks it's such a tragedy, a waste of such an intelligent life to end in death. And you're right that Plato is actually in the painting, but I'll tell you where he is at the end. But before we talk about Plato, can you see any objects in the painting? Apart from the chalice of poison, any other interesting objects on the bed, on the floor?
I think these are like ancient chains.
And why is the chain not on Socrates' leg if he's in prison?
Maybe because he's about to die.
Maybe because he's about to die, yes. Maybe he's already made his choice, and maybe he made the choice willingly. It shows that he wasn't forced into this outcome.
Is that tea?
It does look like a tea, and I'm not sure exactly, but I think
it's either
it's
tea or a lamp.
Yes, I think it's like an incense burner, because if you look closely, you can see some sweet-smelling smoke coming out of the teapot bit. So I think it maybe would have been to make the prison cells smell nice.
And these are probably his family saying goodbye. Like, they probably can't even stand to see him die.
I think so, yes. Either they can't stand to see him die, or perhaps his wife would not have been allowed to see him die, because she seems to be the only woman in the painting, and she's being led out of the cell around him seemed to be only men, so perhaps they did not allow the female family members to stay and watch the final moments. So we've seen the incense holder. Any other objects? Can you see a parchment scroll and a pot of ink?
What? Oh, you mean this? Alright, I think I found it.
Yes, so there we have a scroll of parchment and a pot of ink. Well done. And on the bed, if you see behind Socrates' leg, there is a musical instrument, the old-fashioned lyre, like a small harp. Perhaps people would have been playing music to Socrates before he died. Perhaps he would have been lecturing the audience and someone would have been writing down what he said.
And I think there's some kind of mark on this that's either just a bruise on the chair or some kind of religious, like maybe thing.
I think they would have definitely been on purpose, perhaps an emblem of the Athenian prison or the Athenian government. Maybe it's even an owl for Athena. It's hard to tell from...
Can't exactly see any wings, so probably not an owl.
So maybe another figure. And then this scroll of ink and parchment is underneath this man. How is this man different to everybody else in the room?
Although his face is facing away, he looks like the one who's not panicking. Although his face is not facing Socrates.
It's not facing Socrates, so it is hard to tell, but from his body...
But at least I can't say that he's not worried, but I can say he's the least worried in the room.
Yes, he does seem the least worried in the room. He actually looks like he's sleeping, don't you think? He kind of looks like one of those old men who's sleeping at his chair. His head is slightly tilted forwards.
Well, I can't imagine someone sleeping like someone like Socrates about the time.
So, apparently, that is Plato. Plato would not have been this old when Socrates would have died. So, it is believed that the artist actually painted Plato in his old age, sleeping and daydreaming or reminiscing or dreaming about that time long ago when his teacher Socrates died. So, he's sort of like the only real thing in the painting, and everything else.
And maybe the room, like this old room.
Yeah, so that's what some people say, and it was actually Plato who would have written down everything that Socrates preached.
Alright, so maybe this is real.
Yes, maybe that is real. Maybe Plato, his chair, and the scroll of ink, parchment and ink is real, but everything else is his memory.
And maybe the room, like maybe he's dreaming about Socrates' death because of the room.
Maybe, yes, maybe he's sitting in the prison, or maybe it's true. In the 12 Olympian gods, perhaps he didn't, but he said that he was not the first person to compose the story of Atlantis. So that might explain why he has talked about the gods in his story, but he may not have actually personally believed in the gods. He said that he first heard this tale of Atlantis from one of the original wise men of ancient Greece called Solon, who in turn heard about it in Egypt from the Library of Alexandria, where the Atlantean scripts and records had been translated to hieroglyphics and then ancient Greek. So Plato straight away said in his book Timaeus and Critias that he is not the composer of the tale of Atlantis, but he is just the person to write it down for the first time. The founders of Atlantis, he said, were half god and half human.
This kind of sounds like traitors instead of like fighters.
A little bit like fighters, because barbarians was a derogatory term used in the ancient world to describe a group of people who were quite simple and always fighting with each other and eating lots of food and pillaging villages. So people who were not very cultured. So it was a term used to often describe another country or a culture, and they would say, oh, those barbarians in the north or those barbarians in the east. It meant people who were just always fighting and very bloodthirsty people. So it was not a nice word, and the Greeks believed that King Philip II was like that. He was obsessed with war and fighting and conquering other countries. Philip II of Macedonia recognized this about himself, and he wanted his son to be more popular than he had been. He wanted his son to be wiser, to be perhaps more intelligent. He had this vision that one day his son would rule the greatest empire on earth.
Actually, like almost as like maybe even bigger than like the Roman Empire.
What's that, Henry?
I think it might actually be bigger than the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Holy One. The Holy One is much bigger.
Yes, the Mongolian Empire was the largest land continuous empire in the world, followed by Alexander the Great's empire. So the Roman Empire was smaller. And many people remember Alexander the Great for his achievements, but they forget that behind his success was his tutor, Aristotle. And here we can see Aristotle tutored him from a very young age how to be a good leader, what were the greatest virtues in a ruler, the geography, the history of nations, the best routes to invade.
Yeah, I think that's Aristotle.
That is Aristotle. Yes, you can see Alexander the Great is wearing his very royal tunic trimmed with gold, and he looks a little bit moody, like he doesn't want to be there. Maybe he wants to be playing with his friends instead of being taught by Aristotle.
I'm not sure some of the king has like friends, but yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I think when he was younger, he had friends from other maybe noble families. But as he became older, of course, he had more soldiers than friends. And Alexander the Great was quite a romantic when it came to mythology and religion. And it's said that his mother, Olympia, told him that his real father was not King Philip II of Macedonia. She said that your real father is the god Zeus, and you are a demigod, a hero, just like the ones of the old myths like Hercules and Perseus. Now, Alexander genuinely believed this to be true. Up until the day he died, he genuinely believed that he was the son of Zeus, and it is believed that it is this strong belief in his divine ancestry which gave him the fuel, the courage to be the greatest conqueror on earth.
Yeah, Tremont Conqueror.
Yeah.